Hello everyone. Today we're going to be installing a set of rigid collars on a 2014 Hyundai Veloster Turbo. Now this process will also apply to the naturally aspirated Veloster and any other year of the Veloster, and this is for the North American model. I'm not sure of the differences between the American model and international models. I'm pretty sure this process will apply, but alright, let's have a go. For those of you who are wondering, these are what the rigid collars look like. They're basically like little washers. I know that's not the technical term for them, but that's what they look like to me. And they bolt up between the subframe and the chassis of the vehicle, and they just cure a little bit of the slop that's in there from the factory. I'll post a link in the description to the theory behind these. There's plenty of people that have discussed them in depth, and I don't want to get into that now. Now, in order to complete this job, you're going to need some tools. First off, you're going to want a jack. I know some people don't like these little trolley jacks because they're not as wide as a professional jack, but for this car it works fine. Just make sure the weight rating is correct. You're going to need a solid set of jack stands. The Veloster is 2,900 pounds, so just make sure whatever jack stands you get can support, you know, at least 3,500 just to be safe. These are rated for 6,000 pounds, so you could probably stack a truck on top of the car and it'd be fine. Just a word of caution, a lot of people have these bottle jacks lying around and they pose several problems. First of all, they're often too tall to fit under the cars, so it probably won't even work on your car. But they're also kind of unstable once you're jacking the car up. They have a tendency to fall over. So I just would advise not using these if you have one. You can use a scissor jack, the kind that often comes with your car to change a spare tire. That's fine. Just no matter what kind of jack you use, make sure you use jack stands. Never get under a car with only a jack. You're going to want some wheel chocks, although if you have like a block of wood or something, or just a big rock to put under each of the rear tires, that's fine. You are also going to need, and all of these are in 1/2-inch drive, a 19mm deep socket, a regular 14mm socket, at least a 6-inch extension. This is a 12. It was probably actually too long, so I'd recommend getting a 6. A nice long, strong breaker bar, and a torque wrench that is capable of going over 130 foot-pounds. This one is rated, I think, up to 260 foot-pounds, so this was plenty for the job. But this is kind of why you need the 1/2-inch drive. You're dealing with some pretty snug bolts, and you don't want to just go by hand tight. You want to do this the right way, because you are dealing with a very important part of your car. Now, before you jack the car up, you're going to want to make sure your parking brake is engaged, and if you had an automatic transmission, that it's in park. If you have a stick, just, you know, don't put it in neutral or anything like that. Put some wheel chocks behind the wheels. You can use a block of wood, cinder block, whatever. Alright, to jack up the Veloster, right behind the front wheel here you have, I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but there's kind of a ridge here with these two indentations. Ideally, you put the jack stand and the jack between here in this area. So anywhere along here is good. You just put your jack up and raise the vehicle. See, I'm just raising the vehicle. See, what's the noise? It's fine. You can do it. Just hanging you. Slide in there. And you want to get the center of the ridge of the jack stand on the pinch frame here, and then slowly make sure there's no body parts under the vehicle, yours or anyone else. Small animals, dogs, children, just keep them away. Nobody likes children. That was a little too fast. It's hard to hold the camera, operate the jack at the same time, but it is now securely on the stand there. Alright, I just completed jacking up the driver's side. I should have mentioned before I started, for this job you definitely want to jack it up on the pinch rail. You don't want to jack up any part of the front suspension because you're going to be working on the frame there, and if you jack up the suspension there, it's going to be hard to make some adjustments that you need later. Alright, first thing you're going to do now that you're underneath your vehicle is take one of your rigid collars that's meant for the front of the vehicle it should either be marked F for front, or if it's not marked, look for the thinner inner sleeves on this ring here. There should be too thick, too thin. You want the thin ones for the front. And where this is going to go is on the lower control arm here on the front suspension. There's this hole here, and through that hole, up maybe about 6 inches or so, it's really hard to see, but there's a bolt here with a nut on it, and this is where the rigid collar is going to go. You need to use your breaker bar to remove this nut. You need to stick the rigid collar up in there and then tighten that nut back down, but not all the way. You only want to do it finger tight, because depending on how misaligned your subframe is, you're going to need to do some jimmying to get it all to line up again. If all the collars go in smoothly, you're lucky. But if not, especially in my case in the driver's front collar, it was very misaligned. So I can tell this mod's going to help a fair amount. But what I had to do is you have to loosen this bolt here, and this bolt next to the red one where the lower control arm is connected. You loosen that one and the corresponding one on the passenger side. You slightly loosen this 14mm back nut and do the same on the other. Don't loosen it too much, just enough. And then of course loosen the collar on the other side. And then what I had to do is I actually had to go out and start kicking on that wheel. You know, I just sat down and used both legs to kick the wheel this way to align the collar center in the hole. And even then I couldn't get in. And what I wound up having to do is take my 19mm deep socket and extension, and without putting the nut on, just kind of use it as a hammer and just lightly tap this with a rubber mallet to knock that into place. If you're lucky, they'll all go in. If not, you're going to have to do some kicking and shimmying to get it to go in. But it finally went. So once you have the front two collars in, you're going to put the nut back on and hand tighten it on each side. Don't tighten it all the way down. And then you're going to fully remove, one at a time, these two bolts from the back and put a collar on them, and then put them back in. There might be some more realignment you have to do, but then that's it. And make sure you tighten all 4 of these main bolts back up to 130 pound-feet. You can use Google to convert that, because I can't do math on the top of my head right now. And then tighten up those 2 other bolts if you loosen them, just hand tight with the breaker bar used to get them off.